Alright, what up LSN students? This is a screencast for a 2-for-1. We're learning about the Electoral College and the U.S. Census. You'll be filling out this document that you see on your screen. The first page is on the Electoral College, and the second page, as you can see, is much more brief on the United States Census. So let's head on over to the PowerPoint. Okay, so what in the world is the Electoral College? The United States is a very unique way of selecting our president. It is not just a most votes win type system. So let's find out about it. The Founding Fathers, when they created the Electoral College, they wanted a balance between the people, which is known as the popular vote, and also having some control amongst the political leaders. So they had electors for each state. So the reason they did this is because they thought the people might not always choose the best candidate for president, and therefore these electors, if they didn't like the people's choice, could change the decision. However, over time, the electors have become more of sort of just like a symbolic role, and they never actually changed the votes of the people. So, by the numbers, there's 538 electoral votes to be had in the presidential election. This is based off representation in the House of Reps and our senators, and then plus you get 3 extra for D.C., which, if you remember our quick conversation on the House of Reps, it's based off of population. So the states with a more higher population are the states that have more votes. So like California is at 55 because they're the most populated state with 53 representatives and 2 senators. Maryland, we are a smaller state by size, but densely populated, so we have a total of 10 electoral votes. And this is a quick map that you can look at to check out the different numbers for each state, but we're going to look at a few more as we go through this. So it works in that each citizen of every state votes for the candidate. Now, the way our government is structured right now, essentially 2 candidates have a chance at winning. We'll see if that changes anytime soon, but right now it's either going to be a Republican or a Democrat, and obviously we have Joe Biden, the Democrat, going against Donald Trump, the Republican, this year. The candidates with more votes in that state wins that state's electoral votes, and the first to get to 270 votes, or if you want to think of it like a game, points, becomes the next president of the United States. Now let's say neither candidate gets a majority of votes. What happens then? The House of Representatives will elect the president. Now this year it could be a close election, and in the event of a tie, the House of Representatives will most likely be Democratic, meaning Joe Biden would take the presidency then. Just to go back so you can get the visual of the map. So California, all their citizens vote. It doesn't matter if, let's say, Biden won California by 1 vote or 10 million votes. He gets all 55 of California's votes or points. And as you see with the different numbers across the different states, each state is worth that amount of votes and points. I just wanted to clarify that before we moved on. Now what this means is that you can actually have more people vote for you as president and win what's called the popular vote and still lose the overall election. A candidate can have more total votes across the country but still not win the states they need to actually win the election. So it happened most recently in 2016. And it doesn't happen very often. It's happened 3 times. We all remember the election of 1888. That was a crazy one. 2000 was before your guys' time, but I remember it. And it was a very controversial election at the time. And obviously 2016, I would say most of you probably remember that. Hillary Clinton, if you notice the numbers here, she had almost 3 million more total votes in the United States, but got beat pretty easily in the Electoral College. And that's because Donald Trump won a lot of these key states that can go either way. So we're going to talk about what I mean by that here in a second. Certain states are much more important. So obviously California with more people has 55 votes. Wyoming just has 3 votes. And what happens is a candidate will focus on these states that are swing states that can go either way. For most states, maybe not most states, but for like 2/3 of the states in the country, we already know which way they're voting. They're going to go Republican or Democrat. If you look at California, they're always going to go Democrat. It could be any one of you as freshmen running for president, and California is going to vote Democrat over whoever's running for Republican. And the same can be said about a lot of states for Republicans. So Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, usually Texas, are almost always going to go Republican. What that means is you have these swing states, and these can go either way, and they become very important in the presidential election, as they often will determine who becomes the next president. Donald Trump in 2016, the reason he was able to win pretty handily in the Electoral College is because he won all these key swing states that nobody expected him to win. So states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and more, these states can go either Republican or they can either go Democrat. And that's why they're so important, because the candidate that gets the majority of these swing states is almost guaranteed to win. And in 2016, Donald Trump wasn't really totally expected to get Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida, and then he got all four of them, and that's what led to his victory. Here's the current projections for our upcoming election. If the darker the color, and we looked at this in class if you were here, but the darker the color, the more safe it is for that candidate. So dark blues are safe for Biden. Dark reds are safe for Trump. The lighter colors, so the light blue and the light red, or light pink if you want to call it, that means that it's leaning one way, but it's not very safe. So, Texas is leaning Trump, but it's not very safe. Arizona is leaning Biden, but it's not very safe. The states with like a gray color, those are totally toss-ups and up in the air. So right now, Biden's projected to win, but it does not mean that Trump's out of it. He'd have to win probably most of these gray states and then take a good number of these light blue states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So current projections have Biden winning fairly easily, but they were saying the same thing in 2016 about Hillary Clinton, and obviously she did not win. Taking a look at 2016, here's what happened. The breakdown by state. Obviously, these blue states, Hillary won pretty easily. But you look at Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida. All these states people thought would probably go to Hillary, go to Trump, and that's how he was able to win by a total number of 304. You look at the lightly shaded numbers up here. Hillary got 32 votes in the toss-up states. Trump got 101 in the toss-up states, and that makes the biggest difference. And then there's the breakdown by county. We won't spend too much time talking about that. And this is 2012 as well, if you want to look at that. This is when Barack Obama beat Mitt Romney. All right, part 2 is census. Ignore that survey at the top of your notes, but we're going to talk about the United States Census and what it means. Just write down these terms in your notes. An official count of a population. The census is done every 10 years. It records the details of individuals in households, race, gender, number of people in the family, and more, usually income as well. This is to give the U.S. government an idea of population and demographics, how many white people are in America, how many black people, how many males, how many females, what's the average income in this area and that area. So it is important, and it's done every 10 years. Now, we just had one in 2020, but we don't have that data yet. They're still calculating all of it. But by next year, we'll have data from the 2020 census. A demographic is a particular area of a population. So they might say, the 18 to 29 years old demographic, people 18 to 29 are more likely to be on social media. My bedtime identifies more with someone who's 55 to 80 years old, because I like to go to bed like 9. And so, demographic is an area of a population like age, gender, income distribution, and more. And again, if I'm going too fast, you can always pause the video to write down your stuff. Reapportionment. This is an important term to remember. This is the new distribution of U.S. and state congressional seats. So when we just talked about the Electoral College and how many votes each state gets, they determine those numbers based off the census. And so every 10 years, you're going to have a few states shift some numbers around. For example, California 55, Texas 38 right here, as you can see. Those can change every 10 years after they get the data from the census. And right here, you see the breakdown of the current House of Representatives. So California obviously has this big chunk at 53 members in the House of Reps, and then you go over here and there's states with only one member in the House of Reps because their population is so small, like South Dakota, North Dakota, Delaware, and so on. Redistricting is when you do the census and you might have states gain or lose representatives in the House of Reps, which means you have to redraw district lines within a state. So this will adjust for increases in representatives. It can also adjust for population shifts within the state. So, for example, more people are moving down to Charles County, therefore our area might need to be redistricted because our population is higher. This would be much more fun to explain in person, but just keep writing down your notes and follow along the best you can. Alright, so we're going to look at this map. Now again, this is from 10 years ago because the last time there was a census was 2010 and we don't have the data from 2020. But they will be redividing some of the House of Representatives members across the country. Now typically most states stay the same, but if you look at this map there are a few changes. From 2000 to 2010, Texas gained 4 seats in the House, Florida gained 2, and then a number of other states gained 1. And then you see the green shades, the dark green, that means that state lost 2 seats in the House or lost 1 seat in the House. And then, as I said, most of the country remains gray. And so we'll see what happens in the next reapportionment based off the 2020 census. Make sure you fill out the bottom of your sheet based off of this information. And I believe that is all. So hopefully that was helpful, and I will see you guys in class. Make sure you drop this into Dropbox. Get second quarter started off right.